أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So in our last discussion, we left the discussion looking at the idea of takhliya, which is a state of becoming empty. And we mentioned that the fast is essentially bringing about an emptiness of our own selves. Now obviously this emptiness is induced through, first and foremost, through the GI tract or the stomach. And we bring about this emptiness in the physical body. And the physical body also complements the mind and the soul, as the three are a package that are unified or come together. And they one or each complements the other. So when we have an emptiness of the body, this also allows and assists us to have an emptiness of our mind. Obviously, the emptiness that we're referring to, the emptiness of the mind, is not that it is completely empty, but empty of the ego mind or the ego thoughts. And we will, I hope to, inshallah, look at a more detailed discussion of what the mind is and the different types of intellect. And perhaps we will have an entire session just on looking at the various types of intellects. I believe that if we can understand and appreciate the different types of intellects, it will really help enable us to understand and appreciate our own selves better. And obviously, man arafa nafsa faqad arafa rabba, one who knows himself, consequently also is able to have knowledge and ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the last discussion was about this stage of emptiness, and we looked at the sermon of the Prophet during the last days of Sha'ban, in which he says, إِنَّهُ قَدْ أَقْبَلَ إِلَيْكُمْ شَهْرُ اللَّهِ بِالْبَرَكَةِ وَالرَّحْمَةِ وَالْمَغْفِرَةِ, that the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming towards you. Essentially, when you look at such a hadith like this, it's overwhelming to think about. It's overwhelming in the sense that the Prophet says to us, إِنَّهُ قَدْ أَقْبَلَ إِلَيْكُمْ شَهْرُ اللَّهِ, that this month is coming to you. It's a month that we are in the banquet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the host and we are his guests. And essentially we've done nothing really, and we are of no value add to the month. We ourselves as individuals are no value add to it. And neither have we done anything to become favorsome in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we take an honest inventory of our own selves, we've neither done anything spectacular in terms of our worship, nor have we done anything to make us more beloved in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, all we've done is been ourselves. We've just continued the automated system of being our own selves. So it's a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He is bringing us into this month, which is a month filled with bil barakah, with blessings, wal rahmah, and mercy, wal maghfirah, and forgiveness. And we took a look at the fact that these three qualities, in order for us to be able to receive them, in order for us to have a recipiency of this, of divine grace, of compassion or mercy, and of forgiveness, there has to be a place for these within our own beings, within our own soul. We have to have a level or a degree of compassion within our own selves in order for us to also be recipient of that. If there is no compassion within us, and there is no source of grace or blessings upon creation and people and everything that is included within the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there is no source of being a source of blessing, if we are a source of bala, if we are a source of misfortune for people or for creation, there's no means for us to receive this from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And similarly with forgiveness or with mercy and compassion, when we have these within ourselves, and when the extent of our capacity grows for these particular qualities, the more we are able to receive these from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are a vessel, and Imam Ali alayhi salam says in the hadith, إِنَّ هَذِهِ الْقُلُوبِ أَوْعِيَةٌ, that these hearts, they are a container, they're a vessel. فَخَيْرُهَا أَوْآهَا, so the best of them are the most expansive of them. So the more expansive our container is, the more vastness we have within ourselves, the more we can receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to have these qualities, they need to be mirrored within us in order for us to be able to be recipient of them. And this is the second stage, which is a tahliya, which is where we begin to adorn beautiful qualities or beautiful traits within our own self. So fasting is one of those things that allows us to harness and expand our capacity. It's an exercise where we go through a sort of regime which allows and assists us to stretch ourselves like an elastic band stretches itself. And as we stretch the elastic band, its capacity grows. Similarly, we are, through fasting, allowing ourselves to expand ourselves and grow. Now, I shy away from using terms like growth, particularly because there is a lot of literature out there and a lot of conversations in this capital world about seeking growth, seeking abundance, seeking, trying to gain, and so on and so forth. And so it's a very materialistic approach. So I shy away from using this kind of language because this is we are talking about things relating to the soul. And so we shouldn't look at it and engage with it from a materialistic perspective or vantage point. Having said that, there is an ability to grow and evolve in the sense that we develop our capacity. So this is the second stage. The first stage is a stage of emptiness. So there is no growth. There is no expansion. It is just becoming empty. So it's actually a state of denial. It's a state of removing. It's a state of taking away, which unfortunately within certain spiritual literature that's out there today, they fail to see this, that the element of first seeking to become empty. So the first stage is emptiness, which is takhliya. The second is tahliya. Now, the fast is not restricted to these three elements of gaining or developing our capacity for being a source of grace or blessings onto others. Neither is the fast restricted to being a source of compassion and mercy, neither is it restricted to forgiveness. Although we evolve in these particular qualities, and we should be through fasting, it goes beyond these three. Because fasting is coming to a state of emptiness. And emptiness is a state of spiritual surrender, where we surrender ourselves to the fact that there is something higher than us. We surrender ourselves to the fact that there is a higher being or a higher power greater than us. And we come to the realization that we are completely dependent upon this higher being, because we are weak. In reality, we are weak. As much as we would love to think that we are strong, and the ego loves to boast itself and project itself with strength, in the divine scheme of things, we are really actually very insignificant and weak. So surrendering means to surrender ourselves and become humble and attain a sense of humility before this greater power, this greater being. In essence, surrender is rising above also our own egocentricity. It is transcending the level of the ego and its thoughts and how it induces or produces certain feelings and emotions within us. So we surrender all of this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we say we surrender this, it is the surrendering of the ego mind and its thoughts of separation. Because the mind, as we mentioned, the ego mind, it creates ideas or a perception of separation. So when there are instances that we observe separation and this creates a sense of I-ness, a sense of egocentricity, we surrender this and we return back to unity and oneness. And we surrender the fragmentation, because the nature of the mind, the ego mind and the monkey mind, is that it is fragmented. It is all over the place. Our thoughts are fleeting in all different directions. There's no consistency. We see this particularly when we try to even engage in an act of even a simple 2-minute act of salah or prayer. In that act, our minds fleet and they jump from one thing to the other. So true surrendering is to come to this place. True taslim is to come to this place where we even surrender those fleeting thoughts that create fragmentation internally within us. And we hone back on bringing oneness into our thoughts and collecting ourselves, gathering ourselves together in a unified sense, so that our minds are not thinking one thing and our bodies are doing something else, or our emotions are feeling something else. And spiritual surrender is also removing the rigidity of the ego. As we mentioned, the nafs, its nature is that it is rigid, but the spirit or the ruh, or the higher self, it is a sense of has a sense of malleability and elasticity. So surrendering the rigidity of our thoughts, even back to a sense of malleability and elasticity. So fasting is a means of allowing us to come back to this. It's a means of invoking our higher consciousness and surrendering our nafs to the divine intuitions. And this is one of the things that we can gain from fasting. And so, like this, fasting actually helps us and assists us to develop courage. Because when we think about it, the opposite of courage is fear. And what is fear? Fear is when our minds overrule our hearts. We have fear when our minds pace away on something and it makes all these different assessments of a particular situation, and it overrules our heart.